Good evening or good afternoon. Oh boy, let me see if I can get on. Good afternoon. Am I live? I guess I am. Hi, this is Aurelia Davis. It's a Sunday afternoon. I was supposed to come to you on Friday, but some things happened. Just to talk to you for a short while about interpreting a child's grades, your child's grades. I have always had to instill in my parents that the grades were not the end all of their child's educational purpose. In other words, basically, every child learns differently, every child learns separately as far as what they learn, how they learn it, when they learn it. If you're in Chicago Public Schools or either some of the other school districts in Illinois, I'm sure by this time you have gotten the grades and you've seen what your child has been able to do from August up until this particular point in time. So in the meantime, that's a good thing. You can just basically, if they get A's and B's and C's, they're doing okay because they still have the rest of the year to make up for whatever they were not doing well in. It goes back to when I was attending school and back in the day, and some of you remember this and some of you don't. We got different kinds of grades. We get E for excellent, G for good, F for failure, those types of grades. And at that particular time, I think the system itself decided that they were going to put the elementary schools on the same type of grades that the high schools were getting. So you end up with A's and B's and C's and whatever, D's and F's, being F being the failure grade. So at this particular time, your child has sort of proven what he has learned in an 8 to 10 week period, which is good. And that doesn't necessarily mean that everything that was placed in front of him, he was able to learn. But it does not mean also that he still doesn't have time to catch on to those particular concepts. I think I talked to you a couple of weeks ago about how a child may come into a particular grade, maybe not on that particular grade level. Therefore, if he's not on that particular grade level, that means he has some catching up to do. He can catch up. The teacher, if they were meeting in the classroom, the teacher would have the opportunity to work with him one on one to give him exactly what he needs, or you at home basically can give him the skills that he's lacking or the skills that he needs. So this is very, very, very important. Um, Back when I was in school, we were encouraged to get good grades all the time. And even though there were 5 girls in my house, all of us did not learn at the same way. And we had some A students in the house, we had some B students in the house, and then we had some C and D students in the house. But my mom basically was able to basically measure us each individually. I have learned that teaching over 27 years, different children have different skills and they are stronger in different subject areas than other children. I was never strong in math, but I loved language arts. I loved reading and I loved writing. And so my other sisters basically were on the same page. We all were basically good in in language arts. And so, but at the same time, when that second generation had a tendency of kicking in, they had a tendency of being very strong in the math concepts. And of course, the math concepts were a whole lot different than they were when we were, it was more than one, two, three, and multiplication and division and whatever. They were able to get into calculus. And I guess those types of skills basically held their thoughts where they wanted to delve into, a whole lot more. The most important thing also is that the child has to balance. There has to be a balance. If they love math and don't like language arts and reading and whatever, there has to be some kind of way that you can encourage them to continue to get those other skills as far as language arts and reading and writing, because all of it entails together, all of it mixes in together. And those are the skills that they're going to need before they start working a job or anything. Math is connected to reading. Reading is connected to math. Math, reading is connected to writing. Writing is connected to math. So, to be able to do all of these things is very, very important. And to have a balance is very, very important. And so for us to try to encourage our children to do these types of things nowadays, it gets to be a little hard because they get on the computer games and different things and whatever, and they have a tendency of wanting to just go the other way. And in the meantime, that's not very helpful because where they're very high in one skill, they fall short in another skill. And that will basically prove itself when they start taking their test. The end of the school year test, the exams or the assessments for the state, the assessments for that particular school. That has a tendency of basically showing up in whatever. So if your child was able to do very good in language and reading and language arts, which includes the writing and whatever, very good. If they were falling short in math, then basically for the next 8 weeks or next 10 weeks, you need to be able to have to work on those math skills where they can just easily write or easily read and and interpret something that they've read. Now you need to help them work on those reading skills, those math skills. I'm sorry. And then at the same time, if they're very strong in math and really don't like to pick up a book or whatever, you need to get them to read more, even if it's about reading about math or whatever. Graphic novels are good. Anything with action. I understand these children nowadays, this generation basically are into things that's action packed. It has to be something going on all the time. No more babysitters clubs as far as some of these children are concerned. That particular book series. And then as far as to increase your child's reading skills, if you find that they like a particular genre, as far as a series of books or something like that, then purchase those books or go to the library or however we're working through this pandemic and get them a library card and let them get into reading. And then at the same time, schedule reading throughout the week. Schedule reading throughout the week where they have to read at least for 40 minutes or something like that. We had DEAR, which is drop everything and read. Well, if you can drop everything and read in your house now too, it's still needed. So if that's something that basically your child can do to help him with his reading skills and interpreting and reading a passage and being able to tell you about it, or reading a passage and being able to write something down about that particular passage, then that would be helpful and that will increase his reading skills. You also want to help with the reading. You also want to increase with the reading. You want to increase vocabulary. How many words can he pronounce? How many words can he give definitions to? Sight words. It just should be immediate right now with whatever grade that child is in. And those words basically that will help him get through a sentence without pausing and whatever. Because if they turn around and they read and they start pausing, then they have a tendency of losing what the sentence is about. Okay, so you basically want to get that done. Now, on the level of the math, if they're very good in reading and really don't like math, there's a lot of online games for math for all grades and all ages. And then it basically not only go through what they're going through in class, but you can go beyond that with some of the skills, geometry, shapes and sizes, and those different things. And I'm going to be honest, when I taught third grade, I had to really get into the situation where I had to develop some math skills because I was teaching it to my children, and then I needed it for myself. So I had a tendency of creating songs and games, and we were putting together three-dimensional shapes, and I had them color, and then they were making die and using die and cards and play cards and everything. So we just have to make it fun. You have to make it fun. You have to make it interesting. You have to make it to the point where the child is not afraid of it, but at the same time, they really want to be able to delve into it a little bit better. So then the other subject areas, the 4 core subject areas is math, reading, science, and social studies. Well, for years and years and ages, as educators, we've always tried to connect everything together. We connect the science with the social studies and connect the social studies with the math and connect the math with the reading. Well, when you look at those four core subjects, they are connected. If you're talking about geography or social studies, you're talking about years, and math comes into play with that. Before, BC, after, those types of things. Can't quote anything right now. But at the same time, the math plays heavily into social studies and geography. Math plays heavily into science. And we as educators and as parents, we have to show the children that there's a connect. There's a connect across the core subject areas of math, science, reading, and social studies. These are things that basically are going to always connect, because there's always going to be some kind of numbers or numeration in science and social studies. There's always going to be something to read in science and in social studies and so forth, And so as we're teaching our children, and we just need to know that there's a connection across the core subjects. I always tried not to teach them separately, but as I became more of an experienced teacher, I found myself connecting. And if we were covering social studies in the afternoon, after a day, a long day, or in the afternoon of a regular school day, what I found myself doing is pulling out a math problem and doing a math problem connected to social studies. I found myself doing a math problem connected to science. And the children had a tendency of going back and reviewing some of the things they already knew, be it addition, multiplication, or division. And so we had a tendency of connecting those things. And of course, during the scientific methods, of course, there's a lot of numbers, calculations and things like that. So all of this can play a part as far as a child understanding that all of these subjects are connected. And it's even to the point where if the child got a particular lesson, have him pull out what he would read about that particular lesson. Have him pull out what he would do mathematically with that particular lesson. Have him pull out what the science is included in that particular lesson. And then have him pull out the geography or the social studies part of that particular lesson. And then the more the children are doing it themselves as far as connecting the dots to science, social studies, math, and reading, then they'll have a tendency of being more eager to learn about it. So at this time, the grades that they got, these are beginning grades. And for them to have accomplished B's or C's during this pandemic, or even A's, they are doing fantastic. Don't be hard on them. Let them know that you're encouraging them to continue to do well. Let them know that you are backing them up 112%. I remember also when I would counsel do conferences with my parents for that first grade period, I would always start out with something. He is good in this. He's very good in this. What we need to work on a little bit more. So I just never did give him a death sentence saying that he's going to fail. No. I let him know that from September to June is a learning period. And you build and stack on things that the child needs to learn in order for that particular grade. And so I encourage the parents to encourage their child, to continue to work on some of the things that they were not up to par. I said, it does not mean that they will ever have an A in social studies. It does not mean they will ever have a B in science. But at the same time, if you see where their skills are going up, because the content is going to get much harder as they go along. If you see where their skills are going up, give them credit for that, because the beginning of the year, we're counseling and telling the parents what they need to work on, what their children need to work on. But at the same time, by mid-year, when we start testing them, then we can really find out what they still lack skills in. And that does not necessarily mean that your child is a failure. But at the same time, as long as you give them grades for effort also, to encourage them. Grades, I have always told parents, grades are not a death sentence, But at the same time, I always encourage my children by giving them something for effort and whatever. Now, unfortunately, the skills on the grades that they did get for like their exams and things like that, what I would do is basically give them another opportunity to make those corrections, because they're still learning. Learning is an ongoing life process, and it goes back to my being a lifelong learner in the classroom. being a lifelong learner in your home, in your community, is very, very important. And that's something that from the tiniest baby to the oldest senior is something that we need to practice and try to do as much as possible. So, looking at interpreting the grades, of course, parents, if you felt that you was wondering about some grades that your child may have gotten, of course, you can counsel your parents. Remember, we were talking a couple of weeks ago about having that open communication with the teacher to know exactly what your child is doing, what he may not be doing, and what he needs to improve on. That ongoing, especially during this pandemic, is ongoing month to month, month to month, day to day, week to week, hour to hour. You just need to keep up. You need to have a one-on-one conversation on a regular basis so that if anything does come up, it won't be a surprise to you, okay, as a parent. So what we're going to do is I'm finished for today. I was glad to see everybody back. I've been hearing that people have been looking at my posts. I am so thrilled about that. There's a lot more to come. I promise you, there's a lot more to come. But at the same time, on next week being the week of Thanksgiving, I will be coming to you on Wednesday. And I believe my subject is preparing for 2021. 2021 is being rumored now that Chicago Public Schools are going to go back to in-class learning in January. We're going to see how that goes. But whether they go back in January or continue with remote learning, parents, you need to be on top of things with your child as far as what is going to be happening, what they're going to be learning, what they're going to be getting into, because January to June it sounds like a long period of time, but it is not. So we just need to prepare. And over the holidays, I may stop in November. I'll do a post in December, a real short post, basically giving you a worksheet on some things that you need to be working on to get your child ready for learning in 2021. So with that being said, I'll see you next Wednesday in the afternoon. I hope everybody have a beautiful, safe, and thankful Thanksgiving. Goodbye and have a nice evening.